It's been 14 years since I was in Ireland. I'm back here for a visit with friends, and I had a show here in 2000 in Dublin, and I did a Fulbright scholarship in 1998 at the Irish Museum of Modern Art. And I lived here for a year, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. So I thought I would devote this episode to revisiting some of that and some of those places, and also looking at the Irish landscape in the context of my painting, in which it holds a very, very special place. So people are looking at me like some big weirdo in the middle of traffic. So before I get killed, I'm going to go ahead and get started. We're staying in Galway on this trip. I've had about 4 hours of sleep, and now I'm on the express train to Dublin for the day. And I'm going to see some old friends. I have a couple of meetings scheduled, and just see my old apartment and enjoy it for the day. It's going to take a while at this speed, though, I think. This is the Royal Hospital Kilmainham in Dublin, which houses the Irish Museum of Modern Art, which was one of my host institutions when I had a Fulbright. They gave me a beautiful studio space here for a year. I made lots of great friends. I got to be in this thriving artistic community. And also just enjoy this architecture. It was finished in 1684, designed by Sir William Robinson, an English architect. Designed in the French style, predominantly to house retired soldiers. And there's a really cool cemetery not far from here. I love cemeteries. Behind me is the studio I had. The Irish Museum of Modern Art gave me a studio space for a year. There were about 7 other artists here at the same time in residency. All of us became friends. It was a good place to work. I slept here a lot, even though I had an apartment in downtown Dublin. I would work really late and then just crash here. And I do believe in ghosts, and I heard some pretty scary sounds. So this is also right next to the Guinness factory. So every day around 4:30, the aroma of hops and barley would waft through the windows, and it was a very happy place to work. I think I'm going to go have a Guinness right now. Behind me is the first apartment I rented here in Dublin, 20 Belgrave Square South. And it was a big one-bedroom, fully furnished, sitting parlor, big kitchen, fireplace. And the first night I slept there, I lie in bed, fully clothed, freezing. It was so damp and cold. I cried myself to sleep and woke up the next morning, went to the barrister's office and got out of the lease. And then ended up finding a smaller, more manageable place right down the road from here. And then I found this place behind me, 23 Charleston Road in Ranelagh, which is outside of Dublin. And it's a 3-room apartment. The only problem is the 3 rooms are on different floors. So I had a bedroom on one floor, tiny. In fact, I could lay in bed and open the door with my toes. And then I had a tiny kitchen and then a tiny bathroom on yet another floor. So I spent a lot of time walking up and down stairs. I'm 6'3" and the shower was 5'3". So I developed an uncanny ability to crouch into a contortionist pose to take a shower. But I was clean and happy, and I wouldn't change anything. My favorite way to see Ireland is on foot, boots on the ground. When I'm here, I'm very type A about not being type A. I don't like to have a plan. What I do is I buy a bus ticket to the furthest destination, get on, look out the window, and when it looks interesting, then I get off and I walk. And all I want to hear is the sounds of my footsteps, an occasional cow, the birds chirping. It's a great way to see the landscape up close and to fill my lungs with this fresh air here. Occasionally I'll hitchhike. I'm big, so no one's going to mess with me. But when my kids eventually see this, don't hitchhike like Daddy did. I'm a landscape painter, and I'm always thinking about what that means. I'm not interested in locations. A location is just a zip code. What entices me are places. A place has a hum. A place is something that glues your bones together into the shape of you. A place makes me feel 10 feet tall and bulletproof. the South Carolina Lowcountry, where I come from, has very much the same effect on me as Ireland does. Both have that hum of a place. I first discovered Ireland as a kid, not through pictures or paintings, but through poetry. When I was in my mid-teens, I did three things. I drew, and I did magic tricks, and I read poetry, which is another way of saying that I lost my virginity really late. And when I'm here in Ireland, it helps me to focus on very fundamental things like foreground, middle ground, background, which we're all familiar with. The foreground is that verifiable, visceral marking of a spot. My sneakers are on wet green grass. The middle ground, right over there, I certainly could walk to it, but I first have to project myself over there in my imagination. And then the distance, the background, I can only project myself, so that there's three layers of space occupying the same moment. Three hums, but each one at a different volume. And then there's the notion of bottom and top. When I make a painting, I try to make the bottom of the painting correspond to the area around your feet, and the top of the painting refer to the area around your head, so that when you experience the painting, it's an acceleration of the same orientation you have when you're in a real landscape, with a bottom and a top. And then there's the notion of shadow. In the desert, where I also love to go, it's an assault on your senses. There's very strong light and equally strong shadow. Here, because the sky is so low, there virtually is no shadow. If there is, it's just a subtle bruise on the ground, and then it disappears because the light and the weather are ever changing. So it teaches me a lot about tonality as well. And so when I think about the landscape, I'm not at all interested in painting a portrait of a landscape. What I want to try to do is write a love letter to it.
For most of his life, the Irish painter Francis Bacon worked in a small dark studio in Seven Rees Mews in London. And after he died, his estate meticulously recreated that space in the Hugh Lane Gallery in Dublin. And as I stood there in that recreated space, I was overcome thinking about my teacher, the British painter Michael Tyzack, my mentor, who died in 2006. Michael, although he was younger, knew Francis Bacon personally. And he used to talk about standing in that space with Francis Bacon, with the smell of the oily rags, talking about painting. He told me about going drinking in pubs with Bacon and about being grossly overserved. And there was something so beautiful and sacred in the notion that I am connected to Francis Bacon through my teacher, that all of us are connected. We all wear the same tattoo on our shoulders. We are all painters. And there's such beauty in the notion that it is passed from one painter to another, from teacher to student. It continues. As I stood there in that space, I thought about all the disappointments and the triumphs and the moments of clarity that Francis Bacon must have experienced in that space. The same things that we go through in our spaces. I can work anywhere, anytime, but there's something very important in the protective layers of a studio because I am able to put up physical walls between myself and the outside world. My studio is not a lair brimming with freedom. That's garbage from press releases. What a studio is a room in which a human being can disappear. I need to be completely alone for long periods of time in order to do my work. One of my favorite quotes is, "Find what you love and let it kill you." That can't happen unless you protect it. What Francis Bacon taught me through Michael Tyzack was that good painters make good paintings, but great painters manufacture a world. A great painting radiates heat. Logic and analysis is useful if you're reading a pill bottle, but a great painting is rarely logical. It doesn't have to make sense, but it does have to possess a deep sense of order, like when something's wrong in all the right ways. There's a difference, I believe, between seeing the world and painting it, and painting in order to see the world. I learned how to see through painting, which is why I believe that nature imitates art. I'm a landscape painter, but there isn't any room in my work for the landscape. It has to be squeezed out until there isn't a trace of it left. So in this way, painting is as much about disappearing as it is about appearance, so that the image of the landscape can only appear at the risk of its destruction. Every couple of years, I have the honor of being asked to jury a large juried exhibition. And I've done about 10 of these so far. And it is not easy to go through 1,000+ slides and then narrow it down to a show of about 50 works. But what I love about this process is it affords me the insight into one specific region of the country and how it affects its artists. How do they see the world based on geography? I love regionalism in painting. I think that the best painting is that which is tethered to one specific region, one way of seeing the world, and then using that local footprint to explore a larger canopy of ideas. The Canadian Group of Seven, the New Hope School, the California classicists like Carl Benjamin, even the 16th century Bologna School, painters like the Carracci brothers, all using one flavor, one region, one specific way of seeing the world to explore larger themes. And what these large jury shows teaches me is that there is no such thing as new. The art world is way too obsessed with novelty. That our greatest strength as painters is the history of painting. That is our suit of armor. And that we move forward glacially, always with a tentacle in what came before. The New York Times drives me crazy when they write, there's always things like, although the artist isn't doing anything new, there's always that caveat in there. We're not making flat screen TVs. This is not the way that painting works. The reason I like regionalism is because it is based in places that feel worn in already. And when something feels worn in, like New York City or Charleston, South Carolina, where I'm from, is that there's a spaciousness and a comfort in there that I can be free to be myself and to invent, because so many people before me laid down a foundation which is resolute and fortified. That is to me the strength in painting. A lot of the hard work has already been done. I just have to try to move forward and to try to invent based on or standing on the shoulders of those that came before me. It is a group effort. So the question is not, is it new? The question is, does it endure? Does it continue? When I was a kid, there was an old farmer who would come in from the country to sell peaches, and he was known as the Peach Man. He was also known as the Wart Man, because when we had warts on our hands, which was not that often, it's kind of gross, my mom would take us and we would hold out our hand. He would rub the wart, and then a few days later it would disappear. I still don't know how he did that. And he would also sell his peaches. And I remember my mom asking him, are these local peaches? And he said, no, they're from about a mile away. And it took me 30+ years to process that statement into my abacus and realize the simplicity and the beauty in what he said. That anything beyond his ass sitting on that peach crate was not local. That this wasn't a Luddite or someone who lacked perspective. This was a man who had such an acute awareness of his orientation that there wasn't any room left for anything else. He was utterly dialed into where he was and what he did. He did one thing and he did it extremely well. That's perhaps the greatest lesson as a painter I've ever received. So I'm obsessed with the moment that an object slips into an image. How does that happen? Because in that process of slippage is an intensification that occurs because the painting only has one task, and that is to slip from one thing into another thing. As painters, we take one thing, another thing, and we push it and squish it into a third thing. I don't believe in meta painting anymore. I don't think that painting can be about painting. I think painting is about other things, but it always continually refers back to the act of its creation. It has to have both. And that act of creation, I believe, is called from the history of painting that comes before it.